Let me just kick off by introducing myself. My name is Stephanie Kesson. By trade, I am a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing. I am also a sign language interpreter. I am also a parent advocate. I've kind of done all the roles, and I have a heart for every single person who's here who is pushing through and working with this particular audience of kids, or if you're a parent, if this is your child. I truly believe that this is the most amazing, precious, wonderful population of children in the world. In the world. But I come to you transparently when I say I worked 12-hour days for 10 years straight, and it was exhausting. It didn't matter whether I was a classroom teacher, a resource room teacher, an itinerant teacher. I was working 12-hour days trying to do a good job. And even with all that amount of time, I still felt like I wasn't hitting it home. I still felt like I was scattered and I was spread thin. And my answer at the time was that I needed to just have a few more hours in my day to make it all work. I left this profession. I didn't leave it once, I left it twice because of burnout, because of lack of support, because of lack of resources, and just exhaustion. But I came back twice because I love the kids. And I'll tell you, it is the challenge of the field. If you are working hard and working long hours, you are not alone. But I'll tell you what I had to do. I had to figure out a way to hack it. So to tell you the truth, I actually paid a load of money to get the help that I needed to be able to figure this out. I hired business coaches, I hired teaching coaches, I learned about efficiency hacks, I worked with CEOs, and I worked with all kinds of people who struggled with the same types of time management, I want to say, because working with the students was easy. It was everything else that I struggled with. It was the computer tasks, it was IEPs, it was lesson planning, it was filling out mileage charts. I mean, it just made me crazy. And so I had to figure out how to hack it. And I'm here to tell you today that I did. And the online itinerant, the entire mission of the online itinerant is to be able to share this with you, to be able to lighten your load, make your life easier so that you don't burn out, so that you can thrive, and so that you can put your energy into this amazing population of kids and not get worn out with all the other things that have to happen on this job. Tonight, I'm going to teach you a few things about this topic of auditory memory. This is a hack night. This is not a full in-depth training. My goal is to kind of give you some great meat and avoid all the fluff, but give you the good meat, and then to be able to give you some resources and tools that you can use tomorrow and that you can help support the needs of your students. Auditory memory. What is auditory memory? Auditory memory is how well a student can listen, hold information in their memory, and then reproduce it and act on it and make sense of it. Okay? So it's this process of getting the information, holding on to it, and then being able to pull it back out again when called upon, when needed. So if you were to take out the word auditory, then you're just focusing on the word memory, right? And the reason that it's called auditory memory is because that's the way that most people get their information. That's the way that 99, if our students are 1% of the population, this is through auditory sources is the way that 99% of the people get their information. But the overall system of it is called working memory. And this again is how well a student can receive information, hold on to it in their memory, and then reproduce it when and act on it when called upon. So these are the skills that our students are required to use when they are asked to follow directions, when they are asked to recall details from a story, or be able to retain and manipulate facts that are given in class, like spelling words, or math facts, or new vocabulary, anything like that, where they learn something, they hear it new, and then they pull it out again. It's that ability to take that information and then kind of pick it apart and dissect it, and even be able to do that cause and effect. If this, then that, or sequencing, anything like that. It is the memory skill. And honestly, there's a bit of a muscle in there of being able to, that you have to kind of build and you have to be able to exercise. In general, our students with hearing loss are not as good at this compared to their hearing peers. Because if your students are being tested on it, if they are signers and they're not allowed to sign, then that test is being discriminating against them because they don't have that auditory language to be able to do that. So, a lot of times when I see that test, I make sure that whoever writes up a report, we always recognize how the test was provided, because if they are testing these memory skills and they're testing this ability to bring information out again, it doesn't really matter how that information is received, whether it's received visually or whether it's received auditorily, but how it needs to be received is in a student's primary language. Sometimes you'll have somebody who won't allow an interpreter in to interpret the test because it's auditory memory. So unless it's specific to listening sounds, then which I mean, there's a couple tests that maybe that would apply to, but in general, the goal is to get their ability to take that language, hold it, and bring it back out again. Here's the thing. Memory requires, for us to be able to have memory and be able to bring information out, we need to have incidental language so that we can make sense of what we're hearing. We need to have the information delivered to us at an appropriate language load. We also need to be functioning at an appropriate cognitive load. So let me just talk about these things. Let me talk about language load. So many of our students are sitting in a class, and if they have a language delay, they're often sitting in class with a lot of language thrown at them all day long. Oftentimes, this language is above their language level, right? Can we agree with that? Is that true? So they're getting language thrown at them that's above their language level. It's a too heavy of a language load. And so if we're asking them to pull out information and to repeat information, but the language load has been too heavy for them, they're not going to be able to do it because the language load is too much. It's too much for them to bring in, hold on to, make sense of, and bring back out again. So anything has to be delivered to them at an appropriate language load. And the other thing is this cognitive load. Now, I can appreciate cognitive load because I often am forced to function outside of my own cognitive load. So this is like your ability for your brain to kind of, this is in functional terms, okay? It's your brain to be able to kind of like multitask a little bit. So, I'm checking an email, but my phone is going on and somebody's talking to me. That's too much of a cognitive load for me. Well, think about how our students have to often function. They're watching the teacher, they're listening, they're maybe watching an interpreter, and they're trying to get new information. They're trying to follow directions, they're trying to write at the same time. We're often asking them to function at a higher cognitive load than they're able to. And if they have a language delay, which many of our students sadly do, if they have a language delay, then it's going to really mess up their ability to really utilize their working memory. So from here on out, I'm going to use the term working memory instead of auditory memory. But I want to talk as though I want you to know they're kind of synonymous. Not exclusively, but for our functional conversation today, I'm going to use them synonymously because the reason that people might use the term auditory memory is because that's the way most people receive information. but working memory is the overall skill, and that's how I'm going to reference it from here on out. So for us to be able to utilize our memory and be able to feed into that, we need to have that language background. We need to have it delivered to us at an appropriate language load, and we also need to be functioning within an appropriate cognitive load to be able to do well with that. And in order for our students to thrive with this skill, they need to have a decent and a strong language foundation. Now, when we start to work on these skills, and I'm going to talk about this in a second, but we start with like kind of number memory, being able to name numbers and build numbers and do all of that. And numbers is a great way to start building the skill because there's not a lot of languages required to understand numbers. Right. So you can kind of build this, like, just build the muscle of being able to hold on to information. But as soon as we get in a classroom and a student is expected to follow directions, learn spelling words, copy down and retain facts, now we're talking about a whole new skill. And you can tell how your students are, how their working memory, how intact it is and how good it is when here's a little test. You can do this with your students. If you've done this, I would love for you to put in the chat and tell me how it goes. For you to say to your students, I'm going to say something to you and I want you to repeat it back to me, or I want you to summarize what I said. And then you say something and then you say, now, what did I say? We call this a comprehension check, right? When we say, now, what did I say? Repeat it back to me. But before it's a comprehension check, it's a working memory check. So how do we build working memory? Okay. So to me, there's two foundational rocks in being able to do this. And the big rock is the language. And the smaller, but still block, is the ability to recall it. Language, recall. Language, recall. Language, recall. Very, very important as we're working on this. So this is the big overview, the big skill, the big muscle that we need to build. So now let's get into the meat. And let's talk about some hacks and resources that can help you build these skills for your students. The purpose of these hacks that I'm going to share with you are for them to be easy. I'm not trying to create extra work for you. I'm hopeful that these things will be easy to implement. They won't require extra lesson planning, extra research. You shouldn't have to buy any materials, hopefully, but it's just some information that you can take and you can embed easily into what you are already doing. Memory boosting games. So games like Simon Says. Does anybody remember that? I'm aging myself. Do you remember that game that would have okay, the lights that would come up? Okay. Simon Says that is a working memory game because you've got to like build the sequence. That actually requires no language. There's no language that's required in there. It's just the muscle of being able to build this. Now, interestingly enough, I work with a lot of kids who have language deprivation. And I like to work on this game. Kind of bring this out first. And it's really interesting because a lot of these kids can top out on Simon Says. They can do really well on Simon Says. And what that shows me is that it really just shows how language is impacting them. It kind of shows their cognitive ability, that they're much smarter than what we see because their language deprivation is really kind of at the forefront of their ability, of their skills. But actually, they've got a lot going on because they've got a really strong working memory. And we can see that with Simon Says. Another fun one, and you probably remember this when you were little, but I went to the store and I bought, right? And then you just keep adding on. You could do it with the alphabet game. You can start with A, B, C. I've done this with older kids, and I went to the science lab and I pulled out, and then I used the periodic table of elements. And we build that language, we build that auditory memory with some of their science vocabulary. But another one is like the number memory or the word reversal. So being able to say or sign something, a sentence forward and then backwards, work your way through it. So those are memory boosting games. Activity number 4 is being able to read cumulative stories. You guys know what I mean when I say cumulative stories? These are the stories that build on each other. So right now I'm doing with my students the little old lady who is not afraid of anything. Anybody know that children's book? So it's this little old lady, she's walking in the woods and she comes across 2 shoes. Anybody know? The shoes go clump, clump. And she says, I'm not afraid of you. Get behind. And she shoos them away. She hears the shoes in the back. Clump, clump. She keeps walking and then she runs into a pair of pants. She shoos the pants away, but she hears behind her, clomp, clomp, wiggle, wiggle. So then she goes up and then she sees a shirt and the shirt goes shake, shake. She shoes it, but she hears behind her 2 shoes, clump, clump, 1 pair of pants, wiggle, wiggle, 1 shirt, shake, shake. It's kind of there was an old lady that swallowed a fly. It just kind of keeps building on each other. The napping house is another one. The mitten is another one. So it's this repetitive story that just kind of keeps building. And if you don't have the book, you don't need the book. You can, because this is another thing I used to do. I used to be like, oh my gosh, I've got to go get the book. I've got to go get the book. I have to go get the book. And I would try to get really early. I try to get the library. I try to get the book. You know, First of all, you can email the librarian and see if she can set the book aside for you. But oftentimes these books are available on the computer. So if you can just Google, book little old lady that's not afraid of anything, then you can pop it up online and you can have it available to you. There was an old lady who swallowed a fly. I mean, there's millions of them. There's lots of them. Just that book of being able to build up and make it longer and longer and longer, and then being able to retell it or cover up the page and just recall all the things. 12 Days of Christmas, right? And you go 12, 11, 10, all of that. All right. Number 3, following directions activities. This is the step by step. These are the what they're talking about in the professional academy, some of the resources. We're going to talk about those in a second. These are the draw a pumpkin and you explain what it's going to look like, and they have to follow those directions. The mystery drawing. So this is fun where you just tell what to draw and then see if they can draw. You draw a picture and they draw a picture, and then you compare, and do you both have the same picture? Were they able to take that information and then bring it back out again? So you want to do the whole picture, the whole thing, everything at once, and then have them do it. And here's a fun one for a little bit older kids, or maybe not, is a recipe challenge. Right? Make slime where you've got the glue, you've got the activator, and then, or Jello, or my favorite is Rice Krispie treats. It's pretty easy to make Rice Krispie treats. It's like three ingredients, something like that. All you need is a microwave, Rice Krispies, bowl, but can you give them the steps and they can remember those things? So these are following directions activities. My number 2 favorite is the repeat what I say game. This is where you say something and they have to say the same thing back. Now, some people say it has to be verbatim. I am Depending on my language needs of the student, I may be a stickler about that, but I might not be a stickler about that. I just want to make sure that they understood what I said and they can repeat it. So if I'm giving them directions or if I'm giving them something new, they're able to kind of summarize it. They're able to repeat it. But you can take it and then you can build up. You can build more sentences. So I'm going to tell you 1 sentence. Okay. Now next time I'm going to give you 2 sentences, 2 new sentences. See if you can, and just keep adding sentences and see how much more they can do. This is a fun, if you have multiple students that you work with, you can build a story. Are you familiar with that game where one person gives a sentence the story and then it passes to the next person and then they build onto it, but then they have to kind of repeat everybody's sentence and you just build? And then my number one activity to work with this with students, just to embed it in with what I'm doing, is the same concept. We talked about it a couple weeks ago at a Tuesday hack. And this is the concept of preparing, engaging, and reminiscing. So this is the tell what's gonna happen before it happens, engage in it while it's happening, talk about it. What are we doing? Okay. And then at the end, let's recap. What did we do? So this is something that I do with all of my students every day. And I find that this has so much impact for multiple reasons. So they come in to work with me and I give them the three things that we're going to work on today. Sometimes I've got four, but usually I run out of time and I've only got three. So I say, today we're going to do these three things. So first of all, they know what to anticipate. They know what to expect. At the end of the session, at the end of my time with them, I ask them, so what did we do today? Now, there's a couple of reasons I like this. First of all, how many times do you ask somebody, so what did you do today? Like I ask this to my kids all the time. What did you do today? Or ask a student, what did you, nothing, right? So they go and they work with the speech therapist or they go somewhere and they come back from PE, anything like that. And you're like, what did you do in gym today? And they can't really tell you. They can't tell you what they did, right? Well, I want them to be, when people say, what did you do with Mrs. Kesson today? I want them to say, oh, well, we did this, this, this. I want them to know what they did with me today. So we practice a skill. I always tell them ahead of time, what are we going to do? And then before they can leave, what did we work on today? And anything that emerged in the lesson, like for example, for some of my students, I'm working on prepositions. They like the word over, but they don't know the word above, right? They like the word under, but they don't know the word below. So we're building some of this vocabulary and we're spelling it and we're signing it and we're doing all of this with it. So then if it was something that I reinforce, then we talk about it. Like, what did we do? Okay, we talked about our prepositions. What was that word? Can you spell it for me? What does it mean? So I kind of pull it out what we did. And they can't leave my session until they've been able to review all the things that we did. And we can mix it up and we can go backwards. I can go through, we can do whatever. What did we do last week? How is this different from last week? Then we're pulling. When they come in, do you remember what I said we're going to do next week? Because now that we've got like things coming up, October, Halloween, and all of that, we're talking about what's happening next week. So we're bringing in those topics as well. So those are the 5 hacks. What I want to share with you next is some tools to be able to help you do some of these things. Because as I mentioned at the beginning of this party, the online itinerant is here to make it easy for you. I've got all of these things embedded into the professional academy and the toolbox for you. If you're not a member, I just want you to know that I'm really excited to show you and introduce you to this amazing community of people. I want you to know if you're a veteran member of the academy, there's a lot of new stuff that's in here this year, and you can click and see what's new. When you do that, it takes you directly to all of the new resources. I also want I'm going to just take a minute and show you this top menu because this is helpful for you. This is helpful. The what's new is the same as what is here. So, I'm adding things all year long. I try to send out emails and let you guys know what's new, but I know it's easy to miss because you have a lot of emails. Talking about the cruise, my library, that's this. That's what I'm showing you right here. That's everything that we've got. All right. My teaching toolbox, though, will take you directly to the toolbox. So you won't have to scroll. A lot of people spend a lot of time in the toolbox. A lot of you are getting professional development credits. So anytime you watch a training, you can get credit for that training. There's a number of different things that we've got. We've got Act 48 for Pennsylvania. We've got ISBE for Illinois. We've got New York, CTLE, we've got RID, we've got RID, we've got a lot, okay? So you can click here so that you can get your credit right now. I think there might be a few that cost a little bit of money, like $4 for the year, it might be, but a lot of them have no extra fee for you. So this is really a great opportunity for you to get those credits if you need that. But here's something important. I know that there's a lot of trainings, and I know it's hard for you to keep track of what you've done and what you haven't. So that completed trainings tracker helps you keep track of what you've done and what you haven't. And this little section here, the RSVP, you can just click right here and you can see what all of our upcoming events are. So every Tuesday we do this. This is for anybody and everybody. Invite the world. This is everybody's here for this. Our live meetups and bonus trainings happen the first Thursday of the month. This is for members only, although you can purchase it separately if you're not a member. And right now we're doing cued speech. And I've been attending this cued speech. I'm not a cuer, but I've started after this training. And I have to tell you a secret. I'm using it with a few students, and I already went in. I got the cards and everything that we're going to focus on for our next training. My students loving it, loving it. They are so excited to do it. In fact, I've got my cards like right here on my desk. A student that previously shut down every single time I worked with him now cannot wait to come and work with me and work on queuing. So it's super fun. And then our power hours are getting together where it's not me talking. We're just come together and we learn about what everybody's doing and we ask the questions. But here's the other thing I want you to know about is our lessons from a mainstream. We're having a panel from these two successful deaf adults they are, what's the word I'm looking for? They're products. They're products of their mainstream education, and they are rocking it. They are rocking it. They're going to tell us what it was about being in the mainstream that helped them thrive, and maybe some things that maybe set them back. And what can we learn from their experience? So go into this RSVP and register for this. Anybody can register for this. This is a free event, great for families, and we're even going to have a Spanish interpreter upon request. So if you've got Spanish speaking families, then we would love to have them as well. Okay. So this is just this up above menu. I want to make sure that you see that and you know that that's there. As it comes to what we're working on, some of these goals are built into the audit-proof IEP goals. So this is where this is now. It used to be inside the toolbox. If you're looking for the audit-proof IEP bundles, so in case you're wondering, what is she talking about? These are your assessments that are linked to your audit-proof measurable goals that are linked exactly to activities inside all of this program. So you can use these activities to teach your goals, and then even data collection sheets. It's all built in there for you. And some of these auditory memory skills are inside of here. But I want to show you inside of here, we're going to come back to the toolbox in a second, but on your on-demand trainings, I've got a couple trainings that I want to highlight for you that relate to this. First of all, I want to go into this deaf and other considerations. And inside of here, there is a training on auditory processing. Because if you can hear and you're having a hard time with these skills, then it's called auditory processing. And you're actually still working on the same skills with this population of students. And there are many DHH teachers that are working with students who have auditory processing issues with normal hearing. So this is helpful for those students too, because it's the same skills. It's that same need to be able to hold information and use it and bring it out and be able to use it. So there is a training on working with students with auditory processing skills. It's the APD, CAPD training. It's a 2-hour training. The other training that I want to show you is in the assessments and IEP and legal considerations. You might not even know that this is here, but it's this monitoring students' progress. So we did a training on Avenue PM. And Avenue PM is a progress monitoring program that you all have access to. It's a free program, but you can see how it was created for deaf and hard of hearing students. And there's a section inside of this website that's called copyrights. Okay, copyright. And this is where the students watch a video and then they have to repeat what they saw. So the purpose of this is to kind of see how well they can process this information. It helps identify if they're ready for an interpreter and if they're going to be able to utilize an interpreter well. But in order for them to utilize an interpreter well, they have to be able to have that skill of understanding, taking in the information, and then being able to bring it back out again. So this is that training, and I want to recommend it to you. It's a great training inside the Professional Academy inside for you. So those are just trainings that you can have that you can listen to. By the way, all the trainings are on your app. Okay, so I am going to tap on this box right here. We're going to go into my teaching toolbox. And there are a few things I want to show you inside of the teaching toolbox. First of all, we have an entire section that's called auditory processing. It's labeled auditory processing because that's what we see on the test. They call it auditory processing, but just remember, it is not specific towards kids that are only using auditory language. We're working on working memory. We're working on that retaining information memory. And you'll see inside of here that there are all kinds of following directions activities. And here's some great ones for fall. We've got a fall one for pumpkins. And let me just show you what this looks like. So if you want to, go ahead and grab the QR code. You can see exactly how this works on your phone. Okay, when you open it up, you will see exactly what the activity is. So you're going to give your students some directions, and then they need to follow the directions. And you can do it on a piece of paper. There's actually paper that you can print if you need to, but you can grab anyone. So we've got a whole collection. They're called Listen and Draw. And you do not need to do it. You can sign it. You can do it however. And then we've got this whole section of following directions. So this, you grab a whiteboard and there's a spinner. And you spin, and then your student gets some directions. So you read them, talk about them, read them, make sure they know what they are, and then close the computer or turn them away, and then they've got to follow all the directions. I compete with my students. I see how well they can do it, how quickly they get a point if they can do it all. They love it. They're crazy about this activity. So we've got it with 3 steps, or we've got it with 4 steps here. And then if you've got students who are they're not ready for the words, you're building just some working memory, then this is the digital version of Simon Says. Who remembers? Here we go. Let me close this. So the next thing I want to show you here is the area of auditory training. Now, this is a little bit deceiving because inside, this is generally for auditory skills only, with the exception of these ready to go skills. Okay, so these ready to go skills, let me just open up the fall one for you because it's right here. So these are, again, listening skills. It starts with auditory discrimination. Okay, so this is about auditory discrimination. But if you scroll down past the auditory discrimination, then we've got categorization, which this works with working memory. It's the ability to like pull that information out and be able to share it and categorize it. But then we've got this section too called auditory memory. So, and then auditory directions. So this I usually will take like 5 minutes at the beginning of a session, and I'll just, whatever it takes to just spend 5 minutes on, just as a warm up is what I do. And then we will move on and we'll do that. So those are some of the activities that we have built in, and you'll see we've got something for every season. And these are all about following directions and working on that auditory memory.